we realize that there is a divine essence that is our eternal self, and that is forever moving in and through and as us. This is our essence. This is the truth of who we are. And this essence within us wants us to thrive. It wants us to expand, because then we are expressing our God self. And let me tell you, we are all connected in this unified field of oneness. So that essence within us, our soul, whatever you want to call it, it is for us. Remember that. It is for us. So no matter what is going on in life, no matter what shows up, we still have within us this essence that is always supporting us. Always supporting us. Japanese samurai warriors, and reminding themselves of the inevitability of loss, used the phrase, "die before going into battle." This practice allowed a warrior to enter into combat, without the fear of death then. Because he had brought himself to this state of acceptance of death before he even entered into the battle. So he released all that fear. He had forced himself to look at the fact that death was a plausible outcome. In this way, the warrior was able to fully give himself to his mission without concern for survival. He was completely free to risk everything. Such freedom made all the difference between victory and defeat. Remember the final line of the quote that I have been reading from John Randolph Price all month. I am free because I know who I am. I am free because I know who I am. And who am I? You might ask yourself, who am I? We are an eternal being, right? An eternal being under divine government. We are individualized expressions of the one life of God itself. That is the capital T truth of who we are. How we show up in the world is always our choice. But who am I? When I go to that place, I know that I'm connecting with a higher power. And that higher power flows through me. It is where I am unified, where I find solace, where I know that there is this divinity that is always there to guide, protect, and to urge me forward. So what we must do is to free ourselves from the illusion that we can control life so that it turns out the way we think it should. That's the surrender. We cannot control the way things turn out. We can only control how we show up. We can only control how we choose to respond. We do our spiritual work, we do our work in the world, and then realize that life simply turns out the way it turns out. There are so many variables in life that are out of our control. But you see, our ego self, our human self doesn't know this, so it thinks that it controls life. Life happens. Life happens. Ernest Holmes writes in his book, Living the Science of Mind, one may die from one experience and be born into another in this world. We are learning how to do this by mentally letting go of the old and taking hold of the new. So we die from one idea, so a new idea can come into birth. We birth a new idea. In this thing called you, he wrote, you do the choosing. I like this part. You do the choosing, the law does the outlining. This is the distinction, he writes, between choice and outline. If you choose to plant a tomato seed, you have chosen a tomato plant. But you do not outline how many leaves shall grow on that plant, how many stalks it should have. That belongs to the law of cause and effect. See how we do that? We have set in motion our intention by planting our seed of thought. But then we let it go, and we let the law do the outlining. We try to outline for God. We can set our intention, we can plant our seed, and then let Spirit deliver the good, because it's going to be much better than anything you think it should be. It is. You've got to trust Him. That's the last step of treatment, as Reverend Jessica just did, a spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, where she released her word into the divine law of mind. That's what we do. We plant the seed, and then we don't keep picking it up to see if it's growing, if any roots are under there. We let go and we let God. That's the surrender part. So the equivalent of dying before going into battle for us today is to accept, as if accepting a gift, these statements. Life does not turn out the way it should. Life does not turn out the way it shouldn't. Life simply turns out the way it turns out. Life happens, okay? Life happens. Tracy Goss, author of The Last Word on Power that I've been quoting all month, writes, "When you accept that life does not turn out the way it should, you are free to take actions that are not constrained by the need to control life. So it turns out the way that it should or it shouldn't. We must accept this dying as the last word on surrender. Before we can thrive, and if we intend to thrive, then we must be in this place where we feel free to take a risk, to step outside of that box, to take a chance. And sometimes when you do this, even your reputation, your income, your position, and sometimes your relationships can all be at stake. You will only take these risks when you realize in the long run that you really have nothing to lose. You have nothing to really and truly lose. And this takes tremendous faith, and it takes tremendous courage to step out into that place that looks like you could lose, and to trust, to have the faith that there is a power for good that is always there, waiting to embrace you. Ernest Holmes in Science of Mind writes, "The soul must make a complete surrender of itself to the Spirit. Without this attitude, any perceived threats will cease to hold you back. Any perceived threats that we think is threatening will cease to hold you back. In the end, you will see that they do not affect the outcome of your life. Like the samurai, you can face death today because you know that in the outcome, the end is always the same. The end is always the same. Life turns out the way it does, and because there is a power and a presence for good in the universe, as Ernest Holmes wrote and spoke of all of the time, there is a presence for good. That was his radio show. There is a presence for good that's always operating. In the end, everything in our life is in divine right order. In the end, when we release the need to make things happen the way they should or shouldn't. So what we're releasing, you can see the theme of where we're going, we're releasing the shoulds and the shouldn'ts. Accepting that you can't control the outcome. Not in the end. You cannot control the outcome. And it's not going to a point of why bother. Why bother then? Since I can't control it, why bother? It's the exact opposite. It's the point of pure potentiality, as Deepak Chopra used that phrase. Divine potentiality. If we realize we can't control the end anyway, then why not just go for it? Why not just step up and step out? Why not? We are free, and when we get rid of the shoulds and the shoulds, we are free to play full out in creating and implementing an extraordinary future. Free from the fear of how things are going to turn out. How many times have we stopped ourselves from doing something because we're afraid of what might happen if we do it? And it's something that our soul really wants to do. It's longing to do. And so the surrender part then is surrendering that attachment to the outcome. What we think, by the way, is the outcome. We set our intention. We are specific in how we wish to create. And then we let go of the outcome. So we set our intention. We know what our heart's longing for. We know what the desire is. And if we don't, reflect, go within, meditate, connect with your divine self, because you will know within each one of us there is a divine, infinite potentiality that is longing to come out. It's longing to come out. And when we let go of our attachment to all the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, the outcome then, this is what we're calling true surrender. We are surrendering our need to make things turn out the way we think they should. Letting go and letting God is truly surrendering our resistance to change, to our will, our way of doing it, and making room for the great I am, the great will, the divine will, which is always present, by the way, the divine will to come through. When we're in the surviving and the striving mode, there is no room for the divine will to come through, because we are so into our shoulds, and I gotta make it happen, and I'm striving mode, that there's no place for the divine will to come through, and it's so much bigger and better than what we can imagine for ourselves. So surrender leads to holding a whole new kind of a conversation with ourselves. And here I have a few elements of that conversation. If we indeed have nothing to lose, then who are we to be? What choices do we have between now and the time that we leave this planet? Because you do know that we're all going to leave this planet physically, right? We're all aware of this? It's going to happen. It's the inevitable. But you know, I think of myself, between now and then, what is my heart? What is it screaming to do? What is it pulling me out to do? Because that part of us, that divine self within us, is eternal. And I love Ernest Holmes' definition of our eternal spirit, because it gets to keep our personality. I know that's my ego that's speaking at this point, but I like the fact that I'm going to take with me part of my personality. You know, it's part of my essence of who I am. You see that when you see babies being born, they come in with a personality, do they not? They all have that little bit of a personality that seems to grow, and it gets changed and hampered, and, you know, the soul's choice and all that stuff, but they still have that essence that lives eternally, that has its own personality. So, remember, we die from one experience and are born into another. When we let go of an old way of thinking and step into embracing a different way, then one is gone. It's just gone. That's all it means. It's gone. And something new and better is taking place. The impossible is being allowed to come into this realm of possibility then. Now, if we have the opportunity to choose to thrive and not just survive or strive, we can choose this. We can make this choice to thrive for the rest of our lives. We can do this. We get to play the game of thriving. We get to be the vehicle through which Spirit moves through. We get to do that, to express God fully, and to allow the impossible to become possible, because we have truly surrendered to a higher realm of being. We've surrendered to Spirit. So when we release the idea of how things should or should not be, we have let go of thinking we need to control the outcome. See, that's what we're surrendering, the need to control the outcome and have the faith to know that there is a higher power that is always with us. This is truly letting go and letting God. And this is the last word on surrender. It is. So I thank you.